Welcome to the debriefing for the Manstein campaign. Took a little bit more than 2 years from when I started the Potsdam battle, but I had a break with the Potsdam battle, and it was done in January 2007. 17 January 2020, I can see from my records that I played so more than 2 years ago, I played the Potsdam battle first on Manstein, and then I dropped it for a while I finished Rommel. Also, a little fun fact, I was also living in Bangladesh at that time. Now I'm back. It's a funny place. It's a very, very strange culture, but also very interesting problems to work with. It's a strange culture. As always, a relative term, of course. It's just so very different from what I'm used to. Let's just go through the agenda here. This just corresponds to the titles of the PowerPoint. So we have two things that are important to look at for the debriefing. These kind of both are debriefing. Then we look at the prestige curve. As you could already see, I had 60k left, so it's a lot of prestige to have left. Kills and losses, just the usual. And then of course people are probably curious about what the individual units racked up, especially a certain who flying a Stuka or flying a TAC bomber. I'll also have a look at the top 15 hardest battles that were fought on Manstein. It's something I have become aware of is that of course Manstein is a lot harder, and some of the battles are really nasty on Manstein, although not unwinnable. But it's just there's a lot of difference, a lot of variation between the battles and difficulty level. Also a bit about the core composition, some things that can be improved already. Some of these improvements have already been suggested by a guy who did some of the battles, but I haven't seen any on ultimate difficulty, but I haven't seen him do any of the any more than those he did. Also the question, can we win at higher difficulty level than Manstein? Obviously this prestige curve answers that question, but the question is also how much can we rack it up before we jack it up before we can't do it. And finally, conclusions. You can see here I'm a nerd with too much time on my hands here, and also I've been playing with PowerPoint, realizing how easy it is to make cool stuff with PowerPoint. It's a fantastic product. Really cool stuff you can do, and it's really easy. Okay, as everybody knows, if you watched Bakata play Manstein, he also had a go at Manstein, but he stopped in sometime in 40, I think it was. Manstein, when you start, it's really scary. The first battle, Potsdam, is just... I mean, if you don't know what to do, you are not going to be able to win it. But when you know what to do, it's not that hard to do. It's just that those Manstein units, they're big, and you don't have anything to counter that. So in the beginning, if you watch the videos, you can see that I was like very, very focused on getting XP on my units, so I had something to counter against that Manstein strength, because they are really scary in the beginning of the campaign. But what we do is we catch up in XP so we can overstrength, and then that gives us compensation in 40 and 41, which means that 40 and 41 are pretty trivial on Manstein. Especially 41 is really a cakewalk. 40 is a little bit harder because there's so much infantry to wipe out, but 41 is simply a piece of cake. Then, as anybody who's played this campaign knows, it gets nasty in 42. And if you think that's nasty, then just wait till 43. But 42 is manageable because we have worked up basically we have a strong force that can compensate for the Manstein enemy strength. So 42 is still manageable, although it had some pretty ugly battles, some pretty nasty ones. But again, 43 is a lot harder than 42 because the Soviets catch up in experience, and some of the battles in 43, and we also have the Operation Citadel battles, the what do you call it, Kursk battle line, where it gets nasty. There are some battles in 43 that are absolutely not pleasant. Well, they're pleasant in the sense that it's fun to break them, but they are difficult. And in 44 it just gets worse. In my experience, 44 is the hardest year. Maybe also because I'm making it worse for myself by picking the hardest line, which is the one going through Kishinev. And 45 is kind of smooth sailing compared to 43 and 44. There aren't that many hard battles in 45. I would say that only the last 3 battles are hard. But hard. There are 2 different definitions of hard, which I will, or several ways you can look at it, which I will come to. I've demonstrated before, and Richard Martin has also made a whole compendium of it. There are some things you need to really be aware of when you play this game. For example, one thing you can do is you can get the AI to help killing its own unit. So one of the things you really need to do on Manstein, kind of following that, is the double artillery trap. That one gets you very far it helps you a lot in the early years, or in the early in the early scenarios. I think especially many of the battles in 39 had double artillery trap, and I use it extensively throughout the whole campaign. And as you can also see if you watch the battles, one of the key elements in this game is to simply annihilate the enemy air force pretty much as fast as they appear. We don't want to have them. First of all, you cannot afford taking hits from bombers on your units. They are just too big on Manstein. So any bomber that goes in and hits something will go into a trap. That's essential. But also essentially just wipe them out swiftly and mercilessly. So you have almost continually a superiority. Another thing that I always do, and I also emphasize this on Rommel, is that if we take out artillery, really isn't that much the Soviets can do. And it's usually the Soviets, of course. We also fight against the French and the English and the Polish. But if you take away artillery, there's not much they can do, because we have another thing that will come down, or that will pop up on the list. We have deterrence. We have units that the enemy won't touch. So if we take out artillery, there's not much they can do. So we can have we can control the enemy. Another thing is to look for ambush and traps. Ambush on Manstein is a little bit. You can do it, but you have to be aware that they will fire back because they're so big. That really is the main thing with Manstein. Is it's hard to kill them safely because they are just so freaking big. Also, another thing I did was use level bombers for suppression, but also for running enemy units out of ammo. It's a key tactical element that I didn't do that much on Rommel, but watch out especially for situation where you have auxiliary units that can be used for draining the enemy ammo. It's just an essential tactic in many of the battles. The most extreme case I can think of is Sevastopol, where you just have to run these big forts out of ammo in order to be able to handle it, because you just can't kill them fast enough with the Gustav and what's the other one called? Gustav and I don't remember. Another thing, we've always done this, but in Manstein it's just it gets upped on Manstein. We suppress heavily. In general, you will want to suppress so much that the AI can't fire back. If you combine that with enough initiative, you can finish them off safely. Also, again, an overwhelming force, always something to apply in the game. Don't give the AI any chances. It's always my prerogative. And also this thing that you say we deter attacks, that means we have frontline units that are so hard for the Soviets to deal with, and we show them to the Soviets that they won't touch them. It means we have control over the Soviets when we do that. It's a very important element. We don't want them to attack. We want them to just get killed. If they get attacked, they'll probably run into traps or get ambushed. Of particular importance on Manstein is that, as I already said, the dual artillery trap is extremely important in the early campaign, because it's a way to deal with these very, very aggressive Manstein units that will just come forward and hit anything. And of course, they're stupid, so they will do that, and they will get themselves into these dual artillery traps. That's a very good way to handle the enemy units, because they're so aggressive. It's a thing you have to respect. Also, the dual Stuka, it's an old proven tactics, but it's even more important on Manstein, because you can't just finish them off. But typically, what you do is you hit one with a Stuka in one turn. Next turn he takes replacements, and then in the next turn you hit him again with a Stuka, come in with another Stuka. That usually finishes the enemy unit. It's very important too. And as always, we finish them off. We don't let the AI take replacements. Also, the enhanced air traps are very important on Manstein, simply because you, especially later on, the enemy air units are too experienced to just be taken out safely with just one AA. Early on, it's okay because they're not that experienced, so you can convert losses to suppression. But later on, you can't do it. So you saw me use them almost every time, these enhanced traps, where they just come in and they get killed because they get hit both by a fighter and an AA. Again, suppression, it's extremely important, and we combine it with initiative through master attacks to make sure we can get these safe attacks on them. You are taking on you're grabbing a tiger by its tail when you play Manstein. The units are no jokes when you play them on Manstein, and you just have to make sure you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Okay. Let's have a look at the prestige, how it evolved. This is a little bit of a complicated curve, but what you should just look at is this is the theoretical maximum for Manstein throughout the campaign. It goes like this. I don't remember how high it goes, but it's very high. It's, you can see this ends at 200k. It's probably around maybe more than 300k as a theoretical, but of course we don't reach that. You can see already early on we are well below because we're making investments. But you can see the same for Rommel, and you can see there's a kind of similar offset between them. But I have a larger offset on Manstein because it did cost me more prestige to play. I have to invest in more overstrength and upgrades on Manstein. So you can see that I am falling more and more behind. And you can also see the soft cap kicks in early on Manstein. At some point when I play the campaign, I go like, well, I don't care anymore about prestige. I just didn't realize when it was, because the whole time I was scared about what would happen in especially 44, because I know 44 is nasty. So I kept a large prestige pool in case, because I thought that I would run into paying maybe a couple of thousand prestige in the pre-each battle in combat losses. It never materialized. I think the hardest I had was maybe 2,000 prestige in combat losses, but it didn't happen consistently. So but I was being very conservative with the prestige to make sure that I had, well, not very conservative, but I made sure I had a lot of it saved up. Anything else to say about it? Well, you can see we end at on Rommel I actually burned it completely. Here on Manstein I spent the whole thing and I didn't get below 60k. So the force that went into Berlin redo could not be any more expensive. Of course, I could have upgraded to mouse tanks, but I hate the mouse. But I could have done that, and it wouldn't have made much of a difference. So it's just Manstein, clearly the prestige. You have an unnecessarily unnecessarily large pool of prestige on Manstein. It's not necessary. I just didn't know when I started. I was really scared when I started about spending prestige on casualties later on, because they're not funny, these Manstein units. Okay, kills and losses. This one is kind of maybe not that interesting anymore. You can see how it evolved, and it's compared to between Rommel and Manstein here. On the top it's just absolute kills, and on the bottom here it's relative. And there are some things to be aware of, but I'm not sure I want to delve too much into it. But you can, for example, see that the last year we played here, 45, the attack bombers were killing a lot more, also relatively. They took out a lot of enemy units. The fighters also killed more. The infantry killed less. The anti-tank guns killed much less on 45, but it was mainly because they were fully developed by the end of 44. As far as I recall, they had 3 heroes each, which is, you can also see the anti-tank guns were very busy in all other years, but in 45 I just took a break with them because they were developed. Yeah, that's not that much to say about it. Again, artillery. It kind of surprises me that artillery is that high all the time. I had a few more of them on. I don't remember how many I had. Maybe one or two more on Manstein. But I also had a lot more rocket artillery on Manstein, if I remember correctly. So maybe that's the reason. Rocket artillery deals a lot more damage. And perhaps one you've been waiting for, more interesting than this, is the total annual casualties. You can see that in 39 there were significantly higher casualties on Manstein compared to Rommel. This is not a surprise at all, and of course at some point we have to start spending prestige on elite replacement, so that's why the prestige curve also fell down here, because I had to keep this strength up to make it through 39. But then you can see when we go into 40, it actually goes low on Manstein. 41 is kind of similar. These 2 years I would characterize as trivial, especially 41. Then we get to 42 and it's similar, but then in 43 on Manstein I have fewer casualties. And I think this I can only attribute to simply being better at it. But maybe also because I was scared of the Manstein units, I was being very careful with making sure I get safe kills on them. It also goes like that in 44, although the casualties are relatively higher here compared to Rommel, but still lower than Rommel. 44 was these 2 years are the hardest, and here it's really more. None of these battles are that challenging in 45. Yeah, they are maybe the 4 last battles are tough, but casualties on Manstein were definitely much lower than on Rommel, like half. That's a very, very surprising. You would intuitively think the opposite. Okay, and as just to recap here, we would not expect to have fewer losses on Manstein, but we did. And I can think of 2 explanations. One is I've gotten better, and also I had a lot of respect for the Manstein units. Let's have a look at total kills. This is a bit of a messy table here, but you can see that I divided them into classes here: infantry, tanks, anti-tank and artillery, AA, fighters, attack bombers, level bombers, and goose. And you can see the SE units are marked by this color. I kept the one that I disbanded. I really regret having not disbanded him earlier. That was one of the major mistakes I made. I'll explain that in one of the subsequent slides. But you can see here the infantry, most of them are in the area between 1500 and 2000 kills. So there's only one. For example, Allerberger is really low, but that was because he got his third hero pretty early. You can see Hetznauer, who were joined in the beginning of 44, still managed to rack up 1600, but he didn't get his third hero. And you can see, of course, Ole Dier, I think, is the top scorer. It's not. He's not in this campaign. He's not the big killer. The really dangerous, the really big killer here is in this campaign. I played as Svensberger because he had this huge initiative and attack. It's like a ground rotor. The tanks you can see are most of them are also in the. Yeah, you can see the top scorer is actually this guy with. That's attack +5 and movement +1, almost 3000 kills on him. Kasha, similar. Then of course you have the late arrivals here, Bieber and Hector. Anti-tank guns, you can see they all went they were all close to 2000, so they got their third heroes guaranteed, except this guy got it without having to have it guaranteed. You can also see, if you look at losses, you can see they had they had distinctly higher casualties than the others. Yeah, simply because early on, especially, I let them take losses to act as workhorses when they're Stooks. They acted as workhorses, so the tanks did not have to go and take the losses. It is part of the tactics when you play. You can also see artillery here, also typically around 2,000 kills, except a few of them that didn't. Of course, the SU-122, I really love this guy. Fantastic piece of artillery, but it's annoying that you get him so late that you can't work him up to the 3 heroes. AA also close to all of them in the 2,000 kills range. There seems to be the magic number here. The fighters you can also see. Again, the 2 later rivals didn't work up that many, and yeah, we don't have that many kills on them. The AA took more, but that's also the intention. And now for the really interesting part here. The attack bombers, you can see Rodel went above 6,000, but the other guy here was close to 5,600. Whereas Lind and the other, these guys were below. The level bombers, of course, it annoys the crap out of me that they designed it the way they did, so they have no chances of getting 3rd heroes. I think 2 of them had 2 heroes, but it's not particularly impressive. In my opinion, this is a design flaw. What they did with it. Goose, of course, 2 heroes on him, and he didn't kill that much. I remember what was his name, who had a competition with Goose, where Goose racked up a lot of kills already in the first couple of years. But it was just never the intention to have Goose kill a lot. He's more of his job is not to kill, he has other jobs. Let's have a look now at the, I don't know if you can hear this noise, this is they are spraying against mosquitoes. I don't really want to know what they're spraying with. Some smoke they're laying out. Let's have a look at the top 15 hardest battles. I measure it in 4 different ways. First of all, what is the intrinsic difficulty of the battle like? What happens if you go in and try and play it the first time? How hard is it to do? And of course on Manstein you can hardly win any of them if you just play it blind from the beginning. I would say you can't win any of them at all. How difficult was it to solve? So from the intrinsic to a working battle, how difficult was that to solve? And how difficult was it to play once it had been solved? And also, the two last kind of belong together. How hard do you get punished for inaccurate play? And as I said many times in the campaign, it gets harder and harder as you progress. The punishment for inaccuracies gets more and more severe. And there have been many contributors that have helped make some of the battles even trivial, and also made them so they can be played. I remember. For example, I remember Bakata when he first started on doing Potsdam on Manstein, and then nowadays Potsdam is considered trivial even on Ultimate. But there has also been a battle like Viasma where Richard Martin has also contributed significantly, but also Bakata contributed to some of the key tactical details in that battle. But let's have a look at the list now. Coming in at a number 15, I would say Berlin Redo. It's I think if you play it the way I played it, it is easy, but and finding that solution is also not very difficult. I think Alex already did it. I'm not listing him on here, even though he has posted a lot of battles, because he did not go. I haven't seen him play on the extreme difficulty levels. But Berlin Redo is I used to think it was hard, but when you know what to do, it's pretty trivial. The next one on the bottom here, number 14, I should say I picked 15 because I wanted to pick 10, but I couldn't cut it down to 10, so I ended up with 15, and I'm sure this can be debated. Feel free to do that. So Berlin, I rank at a number 14, and also the order, I'm not completely sure that there are some differences in the order, but there's no doubt about There's little doubt about what the 15 are, but there's doubt about how they belong individually. But Berlin, yeah, on Manstein it is pretty hard to do, but you just have to push them hard to make sure you get them. On number 13, I would put Vilna. Vilna has this sensation when you play it that, oh man, I'm too stretched out. I'm stretched thin here, which is also what you would expect would happen when you play it, because it's the last battle in the Bagration battle line, so it makes sense that you would have difficulties holding the whole thing together. And it is a difficult battle. It's a difficult battle also to solve. I remember when I solved it on Rommel and applied almost the same tactics or strategy on Manstein. But it is a tough battle. On number 12, I put Vyazma, which used to be extremely hard, even on just something like Rommel. But today it is pretty trivial. Lots of tactics that have been developed by people to figure out how to make Vyazma a lot easier than almost trivial. So this one scores a lot in the intrinsic difficulty, but also in how difficult it is to solve. But once you know it, it's not that hard. On number 11, I put Silo Heights. Again, this is not hard to do when you know what to do, but if you don't know what to do, it's very difficult. And if you play inaccurately on Silo Heights, you're going to get overrun. Even on a lower difficulty level, if you allow the Soviets to get across the Oder, they are just going to be all over the place. So the best approach, which is, it didn't take me that long time to figure it out when I did it originally on Rommel, it's really just get the Oder blocked, and then it's easy. But it is very difficult if you don't, and it's extremely punishing if you don't. On number 10, I put Budapest 45. Also a very tough battle, big map. Some special tactics you have to employ to make Budapest itself work. And I also found that it was best to utilize the attraction to Victor Hexes to make sure I could have a concentrated defensive position to take out all the stuff that moved around in that battle. Number 9, I put Tatsinskaya. Also a very, very hard battle to fight, but when you know it, it's not that hard to do. Again, it's one of the battles that becomes reasonably manageable once you have figured out how to do it on Manstein, but it's very punishing if you don't. I would say on Manstein, if you don't use the right tactics, you can't win it. On number 8, I put Prokhorovka, which I'm sure will surprise some. People are usually scared shitless of this battle. I'm not really. It doesn't strike me as being that hard. It's of course nasty on Manstein, but you just swarm them with Stukas, and you can take out a lot of tanks with that. It doesn't scare me. On number 7, I put Stalingrad Docks. Also a very, very tough battle to fight. Even when you have the right tactics for it, it's still difficult. So maybe that one, maybe it belongs a little bit higher on the list. But it is a very hard battle. I remember struggling a lot with it to figure it out. You have to there's some absolutely essential key maneuvers you have to make to take Stalingrad Docks. I would agree that Stalingrad is harder than Stalingrad Docks on Manstein. On Manstein you have to, the key on Manstein when you play Stalingrad is really to make sure you do it surgically, so you don't try and extend too much into Stalingrad. You simply can't do it because they counterattack everywhere they counterattack. So the approach that I chose was to do carve out what I needed to carve out, and then have Volodya sneak in from the north to snatch the last Victor Hex. Again, that's Volodya is just worth his weight in gold for these things. On number 5, I put Yakovlevo. That's part of it's the first, well, not the first. I think the first battle in the Kursk battle line is probably Belgorod. At least we have the AA in that battle. But this one is hard to do, and it has to be done accurately to work. And you need to know that the last objectives that you take in the north, that you need to know how to take them, otherwise you can't do it quite fast enough. Again, in this battle, you have to be surgical. Number 4, the one just following Yakovlev or Boyan, I think that one is one of the hardest battles, and I would say on Guderian I would probably have my doubts that it can be done consistently. Goose did it on Ultimate, but with a lot of saves coming. So Boyan, you just can't do it fast because there's just so much stuff at Boyan itself. But maybe if you just plow into them with infantry and artillery across the river from the south, you'll be okay, and just block them out from the northeast. But it is a hard battle. Number 3, Sevastopol. This one is tough on Manstein, really tough, because you cannot take the forts out consistently, and the Soviet infantry run into Sevastopol is pretty ugly. So you have the problem that you have to deal with those. The forts, as I said, you cannot take them out with the Gustav and the Karlgerät. But what you can do is you can run them out of ammo and then just sit and chip away at them with the Stuks, for example. Or just it's a free lottery ticket when you have one of them, and you'll hit. Typically, you'll take them for maybe 1 or 2 points per turn, and that's good enough. But it is a really tough battle on Manstein. It's always been a tough battle. On the second place, I would put Budapest 44, especially considering I spent a lot of time figuring out how to do it. In this battle, you simply have to accept that you cannot hope to kill a lot of the Soviets. You have to pocket them instead and go in and snatch the victory hexes after you pocket them. So pocketing means we park them on defensive units, typically infantry in close defense zones. So that is a tough battle, very, very tough battle. And on the first place, Return to Kishinev, completely off the scale compared to most of the other battles here. Budapest 44 is up there, but Return to Kishinev is extremely hard. It took me a long time to figure it out, and I had to use a lot of dirty tricks to make it work. Okay, core composition. I think I made I wasn't sure from the beginning, but keeping both SE infantry was clearly a mistake. I got rid of the second one at the Kursk Armory South battle, and I had to start working up a tank. That tank made it to 5 stars, but it's of course not ideal. Especially, I don't like investing in units that I'm not going to keep. But I think early on I was so scared of Manstein that I didn't dare introduce another unit, but I should have done it. So that SE could have just been moved to an SE tank early on. So that's one revision. I think also taking out one fighter early on. You can see here I keep only the initial fighter in the revised core. It gives some challenges for sure. You have to probably have to buy 288s early on to compensate for this, and it probably takes some creativity to do it, but it's just essential because not essential, but at the end I just didn't need that many fighters. It's one of the things that annoys me with the campaign, is they give you so many fighter heroes, so we can just drop one. Simply don't buy any fighter at all, and then just take the hero fighters that come in, and the 2 SE fighters, which also I guess hero fighters. That frees up one unit, and I would probably put that over to either an anti-tank gun or a scout or a level bomber. I tend to think probably scout or AT if we keep on AT and switch to a Stuk later on, the Stuk artillery, the Stuk 4 artillery, I think is probably quite capable of operating against tanks. It's one of the things you have a hard time with later on, is to get suppression on the big tanks with artillery. The level bombers have to do it. So that's the only revision. The only two revisions I would make. I would take out one SE infantry from the campaign early on as soon as I can, and then get another SE tank loaded and drop that fighter and get a scout or an AT instead. Okay, this I'm sure will be. This I'm sure is what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to come up with an estimate for what can you really what could you theoretically expect to be able to win, what difficulty level, how hard can you make it. And I mean, yeah, Goose is going through ultimate, but I mean, I to me it's scary just watching it. They are just so ugly, the forces he's up against on ultimate. So just as I've already said, or said many times before. Yeah, I think Goose will win it, but it is hard to do. I would say that I estimate that that's my personal estimation. I estimate that Manstein is harder than Guderian. So I put Manstein at 3, Guderian at 1, and Rommel at 1. So Guderian 2, Rommel 1, and Field Marshal 1 in terms of the difficulty. So you can just sum them up. That's what I did here, and then I said, okay, which ones are we expecting to be tough? And you can see if you take something like Manstein and Rommel, that's this one. It's hard to do, but I don't think it's not. It's absolutely doable. Another one to do would be Guderian Rommel. I don't think that would be so hard to do, but Guderian will probably give you some battles that are unwinnable or close to unwinnable. Manstein doesn't really do that. At least I won them all. So that's my assessment of it. How to figure out which combinations you can actually win, and I'm pretty sure Manstein Rommel is winnable. Maybe Field Marshal Manstein Rommel. I have that one as very hard. But as long as you can, I mean, if you get your units experience, this one is not that big a deal. It's just that it slows you down. So you probably have to spend some prestige early on to compensate. Okay, conclusions here. Yeah, Manstein is definitely harder than Rommel. It's a lot harder. It's especially early on. It's pretty scary. But the way you do it is you get past the initial difficulties, and you work up some XP, so you can also afford overstrength, and then you start catching up. And when you get to 41 and 44, 40 and 41, it's not that hard to do. Then it gets, of course, harder in 42, and in 43 and 44 it's really ugly, but you have the core to handle it. We have the same tactical elements on Rommel, but we have more emphasis, especially on double artillery trap, dual Stuka, and significant suppression, and master attack to make sure we can attack safely, because they will fire back very often. And I made one mistake with that SE infantry I kept, and I shouldn't buy the second fighter early on. This will be a challenge, but I think it can be handled. And also let me just again once again congratulate the game designers. That's just designers, I guess it would be. The Grand Campaign is really fantastic. I love playing it, and especially because it's so long that you really feel like you are going through it, and you are spending your time living with these guys that you're commanding. So it really feels like you're going through it, and it's just the length and the intensity that are very important to make you feel like you are doing it. That you're commanding this corps, and you can see that I spent 2 years, a little bit more than 2 years on it. The first battle was played in 17 January 2020. Also in fact at the same location that I'm playing now, in a hotel in Dhaka, Bangladesh. It's a very simple game engine. I mean, people will often say, "Why are you playing this junk? It's nothing compared to the more advanced engines." But it's just, it doesn't have to be complicated. In my experience, in my opinion, it doesn't. I mean, I don't want to sound as if graphics don't matter, and I don't want to sound like once I heard somebody say that, oh, you don't need graphical text editing. Yeah, you do. That was back in the time when people thought that Word Perfect without graphics was the way to make text documents. It's not. Obviously, you can improve on the graphics, but in my opinion, what matters more is that is that um, is that the game has a realistic sense to it. It's not the graphics that I'm after. And again, I can say I've said it many times before. I've often referred to the AI as an AS, and it really is horrible. But it makes up for it by they just give it a shit ton of units, so the game designers can compensate for the stupidity, because it really is stupid. It would be fun to I mean, I'm not a software engineer, but I do work with software, so I'm pretty sure that if you give me a week, I could improve this thing. They're just some obvious mistakes that the AI makes that makes you go like, what the hell did you think about? But I think I've said it before. It seems like they just copied the code from Panzer General 1 or 2, almost 1-to-1, because it has the same stupidity as especially Panzer General 2. Okay, thank you for watching.